Whereas the girl gets Lumina's light magic, the sprite instead gets Shade's dark magic. These spells are rather interesting to see, so let's have a look. Shade's first spell is Dark Force. This is kind of your go-to spell for dealing dark damage to the enemy, since, much like Light Element, there really aren't too many ways in the game to deal dark elemental damage. It sends explosive streams of dark energy into the enemies. Fairly inexpensive and rather satisfying. The critical makes the streams of darkness even longer. It also makes it end with explosions similar to Exploder's critical version, but for some reason I actually like them better here for Dark Force. Next up we have Evil Gate. With a cost of 8 magic points, you'd expect this one to be pretty impressive, and visually it is. "28 damage? What a ripoff! I want my magic back!" The thing about this spell is I have read that it does carry a slight chance of causing instant death. That slight chance must be extremely slight, because, I've never seen it happen, put it that way. And so long as it isn't causing instant death, the result just isn't worth the magic you spend. I will give it this, though. The critical looks rather nice. That's an impressive portal to darkness. But sadly, the results aren't any better. This is also the only spell in the game that has an alternate critical. Yes, it's the Parade of Shadow Zeros. Including one last straggler. But again, the end results are still the same. Finally, we have one of the sprite's few utility spells, Dispel Magic. Observe the Turtle Lancer there. He just cast Ice Saber on himself. But as we cast Dispel Magic, watch his spear. Currently it has the blue of Ice Saber, but now it's back to normal. The critical doesn't look too much different, aside from the end result having 8 orbs around the enemy instead of just 4. Basically all it's there to do is remove buffs. Unfortunately, it can't remove things like Wall or Lucid Barrier, or it would have been a lot more useful. Next up is Luna. This magic is weird at best. At least one spell of the 3 is highly useful, but the other 2... First, let's go ahead and show that one useful spell, Magic Absorb. This one works along the same principles as Energy Absorb, except it drains magic power, and that's quite useful. Very nice indeed. Very handy. Since it works like Energy Absorb, the critical pretty much is the same kind of thing as Energy Absorb, just making double spirals. But here's a point to make. Keep in mind that if you drain from multiple sources, you'll drain less. This is a useful spell not only for weakening the enemy's attacks, but it also keeps the sprite nice and charged up with magic so you can save fairy walnuts that way. Next we have Change Form. This one can be rather fun to use. Pretty much it does exactly what you'd think, changing the enemy's form. It generally changes them to a weaker monster found toward the start of the game. It's not quite a full transformation. They basically have the stats of those enemies, but they still have the health of the enemies you were earlier dealing with, so they can't hit as hard, but they're still fairly durable. The critical version pretty much looks the same, though. Now there is one thing worth noting, though, about the transformation. It's not permanent, so make use of it while you can, before they change back again. And then there's this thing, lunar magic. It's not a utility to help you make Super Mario World hacks this time. This time, it's the roulette of magic. This can have a lot of weird effects. It can heal everything on screen. It can knock out everything on screen. You never know what this thing's gonna do. It can make the enemy wimp out, which is basically the same as change form. But be cautious. It can also change your form. Koopi Koopapo? The critical version, it just makes more moons and stars flash everywhere. The results, though, they aren't any more stable. When I was playing this game with Pink over the internet, there were several times that she would just out of nowhere decide to cast lunar magic just to be silly. It led to interesting times. Finally, it's time for Dryad. Her most powerful magic may be sealed when you first meet her, but she still helps where she can. Dryad's first spell is Burst. A rather forceful spell, and pretty nice to have, though what do explosives have to do with trees? Does Dryad think she's a territorial oak or something? A nice thing to note is that, unlike pumpkin bombs, the sprite doesn't have to sacrifice any life or anything to use this one. The critical form isn't really too hard to guess. It pretty much follows the same path as all explosive magic in the game. Still pretty impressive and forceful, though. Next up, we have Sleep Flower. This one just renders the enemy unconscious, though that's nice enough. It's rather nice to do that to them instead of them doing it to you for a change. Blasted trap flowers. While unconscious, you can still hit enemies, so make use of that before they wake up again. It is rather amusing to note that you can even use Sleep Flower on annoying things like LA Funk. And for some reason, doing so turns them into a little ball. Sadly, though more solid, you still can't strike it with weapons. This was just the first time I ever saw this actually happen. As a critical, Sleep Flower doesn't look too terribly different. Maybe it adds just more petals or something. But either way, the end result is pretty much the same. Just remember, they won't stay asleep for too long. And finally, just like the girl, the sprite does get mana magic. It's pretty much the same effect as the girl's version of it, so everything I said for her goes here as well. It's basically a glorified cutscene to revive the mana sword. It's kinda sad that you only get to do this during the final boss fight. It would have been fun to use it during the rest of the game just for its sheer overpoweredness. The version of the mana sword you get just through using the 9th sword orb glitch, it can't compare to this kind of power. It's definitely the way to go against the final boss. Otherwise, you're just going to be picking away slowly at it for maybe a maximum of 120 damage or so per shot. Just remember, just like with the girl, the sprite's version of the spell is useless by itself. You have to cast both versions of it for it to do anything. 500 a hit, much better. And yeah, see, it even casts Wall on itself, so powering up the Mana Sword is definitely the way to go here. And just like with the girl, Mana Magic can go critical, but it doesn't really look any different at all. What do you expect from plot magic? And thus, that's all for the sprite's magic. His powers can fell even the most annoying of bosses quite quickly, if you know what type you need, and even the most annoying LA Funk can't stand up to his power. With that, we're done with the magic demos, and almost finished with Secret of Mana. All that's left now are the weapon charges, so that'll be handled next time. As ever, thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the videos, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, fare thee well.